Okay, so the last section that we need to get familiar with before we can start reading the stories of your chart are the lines. I want you to know that this portion could get much more technical in the conversation of astrology, but we're going to keep it high level because we can save the technicalities of the lines for later when we are bored of reviewing the signs and the planets. We're going to use my son Hadley's chart to learn about the lines because this is a picture he mostly shares with his twin sister, and I have studied these lines more than any others in all of my astrology work. They have a ton. So the first lines that I want you to get a clear picture of are the AC/DC lines and the MC/IC lines. They set out the four quadrants of any chart, but the signs they land in also have stories to tell us about our being. All right, let's talk about the AC/DC line first. Some astrologers believe that the point of the AC is the most important point in your whole chart. We've already covered this point in the signs, but I want to expand it a bit in this context as well. When we stand on the black X in the middle, the point where you are, we look to the AC and say, "That is me. I get that energy." And you turn your face towards that sign and start taking some steps. With your face turned towards the AC, you can look back over your shoulder to the DC and say, "That's where I started out, but really it's not me. I appreciate it in the way we loved being around our mamas when we were tiny, but I'm heading to this other version of myself as my life grows up." The DC, the opposite of the AC, also shows up in the space of our chart where we start our own course out into the world, where we build the relationships that we choose. And so it helps us see what qualities we appreciate in others or how we connect, but ultimately that is not our self point. While we admire others for these qualities, these themes probably show us more of our old selves and energies that are keeping us in old unserving stories and patterns. So let's look at Hadley's AC/DC. You can see here that his AC is in Virgo and his DC is in Pisces. Kiddos oftentimes are living their DC more so when they are young, and as they move out in life, we want to start to encourage them to notice themes of their own AC. The other line that I want you to be familiar with is the MC/IC line, or the midheaven and the nadir. If the AC represents the eastern horizon of your chart, then that establishes that the DC is the setting west and the MC is the highest point the sun would reach that day. So then the IC, or the nadir, represents the darkest part of the night or the middle of the night. IC stands for Imam Kuli, which is Latin for lowest point. As the dead of night, the IC is the deepest, darkest, quietest, most personal place in your whole being. So it's home to your private life. This point describes who you are when no one else is looking. This is how you think, how you feel, and how you act when you are completely alone with no one else watching. It's that part of you that knows something deep in your bones, gets a gut feeling, the still small voice, or even where your intuition lives. Across from the IC is the midheaven, which is also known as medium colae, which is Latin for highest point. It is the very top of our chart. So as the opposite of the IC, this houses our public persona, or the face that we put on to show the world. This is the brightest, most open, most well-lit part of your personality. It's the height of the day. It's the part of you that we see when you are at work or on stage or even on screen. It's the part of you that you put on the internet. This is the you that people hear about from other people. When they see you or hear about you but haven't met you face to face, this is what they see in your MC. Another way to look at the IC/MC is to say the IC is who you came to be and the MC is what you came to do in the world. It's what jobs or types of work you can really get behind. What do you want to put on display for the collective? And then back to the IC, what did you bring as a gift for the world? So if we put ourselves in the place of the X, or the self, in the center, we want to go inside with this energy. Where the AC/DC was the idea of moving forward from a starting point to a destination with the energy of the AC forward and looking back towards the DC, let's bring this picture of the MCIC as a place within our being, okay? So the IC, or the nadir, is a really primal place. It's our nature, or what we have to offer simply because we are here. It's also the idea that we are worthy just because we are here. This is our IC, our nature, our primal energy. And the MC, as we move out into the public aspects of our life, is what we have to offer the world. This is the piece of pie we are bringing to the collective buffet. So here in Hadley's chart, if we pull out this line and examine it, he has Sagittarius in his primal roots and Gemini in his outward expression, which this point cracks me up for my twinners because they are actually twins, right? With Gemini midheaven. What they have to offer the world is their thought processes, their teachings, and their ideas. They really get duality, one thing and the other, and it's so true of them. So here's how I let that inform me as someone who loves Hadley and interacts with his energy picture on a daily basis. I know that him and his sister Addie come from a deep, deep desire to find freedom and adventure. It's a burning desire deep in their belly. But by the time I get to see it in his person, it has shifted from this fire, passion, burn to a sharp and shifting Gemini wind. This axis is mutable, so he needs fuel, or in this case, help from me, but without getting in the way of his passions or ideas. That's where I rest my awareness. He's so different than me in this way. I have really different energies on this line. We could really clash over this point if I expected him to operate from the same roots and the same growth as me. So this is how we can use these stories to extend love and grace to ourselves, but also to the people that we love around us. I'm totally drinking coffee. It's morning here. Okay, this is where the lines could get a little confusing, but stay high level with me. I'm not gonna lie, there are more layers that we are going to pass over because we are sticking with the basics. But the little detail that I want to teach you before we start to read charts are the lines in the center, the red ones and the blue ones. Skip the dotted green ones for now. Trust me, the layers that you have learned here will keep you busy for a lifetime, and you will elevate your awareness greatly. If you're like me and you want it all, you'll get there, but start here first. In my work with charts and clients, I do my best service when I stay here with these concepts and only go digging for the finer details or the hidden layers when really necessary. Your discernment will grow into knowing when and how to move about in these readings. So what do you want first, the good news or the bad news? No, I'm just kidding. It's all good news when you're using it to inform yourself. The red ones show us conflict or energies that don't get along easily in our being. These lines are oppositions, which shows us signs directly across from each other, and squares, which is when we start at one point or planet and move to the center of the self, the X, and then to another planet point that draws a 90-degree angle. Notice that when you do this tracing of the lines, drawing oppositions and squaring angles, what changes? Notice the dualities, the qualities, and the elements. We want to remember that just because you see a lot of red lines doesn't mean that you're doomed or your fate is upon you, okay? In this work, we're just using the tight spots to inform ourselves of what life is for us. And then the blue lines show us harmony and support. There are trines, which are 3 signs between points. They always share the same element. And sextiles, which share duality. Each of these blue and red lines have really interesting stories to tell, and we will get into them in more detail when we're reading our charts. Okay, there are a couple of aspects that show relationship between 2 points that are too close to each other to actually draw lines, and I want to bring them to your attention. The first one is called a conjunction. This is when two planets are within 5 degrees of each other and we throw them and their themes into a blender and hit go. It's like making an energetic smoothie, and when we pour it into the glass, the key words of these 2 points are totally combined. Like, look here on my fella Abe's chart. His sun is in Cancer and his Mercury is in Gemini, but they are within 5 degrees of each other, and so we throw them in a blender and start to tell the stories crisscrossing back and forth between these 2 themes. That can be a really interesting mix. Okay, so another aspect that doesn't draw lines but I want you to be aware of is called a stellium. This is where 3 or more of the planets are in the same sign or house. We can explore them in either of those scenarios, signs or houses. So the person who holds that aspect in their energy has a huge concentration of those themes or that energy. And those planets generate a big part of the energy picture of that soul. Or there is an intense focus around those points. So here in Abe's chart, he has a stellium in Libra. These planets are looking for balance and love. We could also say he has a stellium in the 2nd house, which has implications in layers that we're also saving for a later time. But both of these statements are true or helpful in exploring his human makeup. Once we know them separately, we can start to weave them together and get a really clear picture of the heart of what their collective force means in our lives.